The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with the excited chatter of a dozen different species. Ambassador Zektar of the Vorthan Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes and gazed down at the small delegation seated at the newcomers' table. The humans looked so ordinary, so fragile. Their pale skin seemed thin as paper, their bodies lacking any natural armor or obvious weapons. Most amusing of all, they appeared nervous. "These are the beings that claim to represent an entire star system," whispered Council Member Thys, her serpentine tongue flicking out in amusement. "They look like they might break if someone spoke too loudly." The human ambassador, a middle-aged woman with graying hair named Sarah Chen, stood slowly. Her hands trembled slightly as she activated the translation device. "Honored members of the Galactic Council, we come seeking peaceful integration into your alliance. Humanity offers friendship, trade, and knowledge to all willing species." Several council members exchanged glances. The Krillians snorted through their 4 nostrils, while the crystalline Zephyrite chimed with what could only be described as laughter. Ambassador Zektar raised a clawed hand for silence. "Tell us, human," Zektar's voice boomed through the chamber. "What exactly does your species bring to this council? We have seen your primitive ships limping through space. Your technology appears centuries behind our most basic systems. What weapons do you possess? What territories do you control beyond your single unremarkable world?" Sarah Chen's voice remained steady despite the obvious condescension. "We control our home system of Sol, including 3 colonized planets and numerous mining stations. Our fleet consists of 47 ships of various classes. As for weapons..." She paused, consulting her notes. "We have kinetic projectile systems, basic energy weapons, and defensive technologies." The chamber erupted in barely contained laughter. 47 ships? The Vorthan Empire alone commanded over 10,000 vessels. The Krillian hegemony boasted fleets that could darken entire star systems. Even the smaller member species possessed hundreds of warships. "Kinetic projectiles?" Thys hissed with amusement. "Do you mean to tell us that you still throw rocks at your enemies?" "With respect," Sarah replied, her voice gaining strength. "We prefer to call them mass drivers and railgun systems." More laughter rippled through the assembly. War Leader Brutok of the Krillians stood to his full 3-meter height, his tusks gleaming under the chamber's lights. "Perhaps we should explain how things work in real space, little human. This council maintains order through strength. The strong survive and prosper. The weak serve or perish." He gestured toward the massive view screen that dominated one wall. It showed a map of known space with territories marked in different colors. The Vorthan Empire controls 47 star systems and commands absolute loyalty from another 20 vassal worlds. My own hegemony rules 31 systems with an iron fist. Even our smallest member, the Nexari Collective, oversees 16 systems. Sarah Chen studied the map carefully. "And how do you maintain control over such vast territories?" "Through demonstrated power," Zektar replied smugly. "When a species challenges the established order, we make examples. The ruins of the Altarian homeworld serve as a monument to what happens when inferior beings forget their place." The human ambassador's face remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "The Altarians refused to submit to your authority?" "They were a peaceful species, much like yourselves," War Leader Brutok explained with obvious satisfaction. "Artists and philosophers. They believed their culture made them valuable. They learned otherwise when our bombardment fleets reduced their cities to ash." "I see," Sarah said quietly. "And this is the standard response to non-compliance?" "It is the only response that maintains order," Zektar confirmed. "The strong have a responsibility to guide the weak. Those who resist that guidance remove themselves from existence." The chamber fell silent as Sarah Chen sat down and whispered something to her fellow delegates. They appeared to be having an intense discussion, though their voices remained too low for the translation devices to pick up. Council Member Theiss slithered closer to the newcomer's table. Perhaps you need time to consider your position, humans. Your options are simple. Submit to Galactic Council authority and accept tributary status, or return to your little system and await the consequences of your defiance. Sarah stood again, her expression now completely calm. What would tributary status entail? 70% of your system's resources would be allocated to council members, Zektar explained. Your ships would serve in our fleets under our command. Your people would provide labor where needed. In return, you would receive protection and the privilege of continued existence. 70%? One of the other human delegates asked incredulously. The cost of civilization, War Leader Brutok rumbled. The weak always pay for the protection of the strong. Sarah Chen nodded slowly. And if we refuse these generous terms? Then you join the Altarians in galactic history, Zektar said with finality. Your system will be claimed, your resources redistributed, and your species will serve as a reminder to others about the importance of cooperation. The human delegation huddled again, speaking in urgent whispers. After several minutes, Sarah Chen rose and faced the assembled council. We need time to discuss this with our government. You have one standard galactic month, Theiss announced. Return here with your answer. Choose wisely, humans. This council's patience is not infinite. As the humans filed out of the chamber, several council members continued to chuckle among themselves. War Leader Brutok turned to Zektar with a predatory grin. How long do you think it will take them to accept? 2 weeks at most, Zektar replied confidently. They have no military capability to speak of. Their entire fleet would barely qualify as a scouting force for any of our member species. Should we begin preparations for integration? Asked another council member. Not yet, Theiss interjected. Let them return to their system and see the futility of resistance. Sometimes the weak surprise us with their stupidity. We may need to make an example after all. 3 weeks later, a priority communication arrived at the Galactic Council headquarters. Ambassador Zektar accepted the transmission with mild interest, expecting the predictable human surrender. Instead, Sarah Chen's face appeared on the screen, but she was no longer in civilian diplomatic attire. She wore what appeared to be a military uniform, and her expression had hardened considerably. Ambassador Zektar, I'm transmitting from the bridge of the UES Retribution flagship of humanity's 12th Fleet. I bring our government's response to your council's generous offer. Zektar blinked in confusion. 12th Fleet? You claim to possess only 47 ships total. We do appreciate your council's educational presentation, Sarah continued as if he hadn't spoken. Learning about the Altarian genocide was particularly informative. It helped our leadership understand exactly what kind of civilization we're dealing with. Choose your words carefully, human, Zektar warned, though something in her tone was beginning to concern him. Oh, we've chosen more than words, Sarah replied with a cold smile. We've chosen to decline your offer of tributary status. In fact, we've decided to make a counteroffer of our own. The communication cut out, leaving Zektar staring at a blank screen. He immediately called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Within hours, the chamber was filled with agitated voices as species representatives demanded explanations. War Leader Brutok paced back and forth like a caged predator, his tusks clicking with irritation. Impossible, he snarled. They have no military strength. This is clearly a desperate bluff. Perhaps, Theiss agreed, but we should verify their claims about this 12th Fleet. Our intelligence indicated they possessed minimal space capabilities. Zektar activated the chamber's communication array. Contact our border patrol ships. I want a full scan of the human system immediately. The response came back within minutes, and the patrol captain's voice carried a note of confusion. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the Sol system. There appear to be significantly more ships than our previous intelligence suggested. Define significantly more, Zektar demanded. Current count shows approximately 1,500 vessels of various classifications, sir, and they're moving toward the jump points. The chamber fell completely silent. 1,500 ships? Where had the humans been hiding such a force? Council member Thys was the first to speak. This changes nothing. Numbers alone do not determine victory. Their technology remains primitive. Sir, the patrol captain's voice interrupted. We're receiving another transmission from the humans. Put it through, Zektar ordered. Sarah Chen reappeared on the view screen, but now the background showed what was clearly a military command center bustling with activity. Greetings again, Galactic Council. I hope our fleet movements haven't caused any alarm. What is the meaning of this display? Zektar demanded. Are you threatening Council territory? Not threatening, Sarah corrected. Clarifying. You see, during our brief diplomatic exchange, we realized there had been some significant misunderstandings about humanity's capabilities. You claim to possess only 47 ships, War Leader Brutok accused. We possess 47 diplomatic and exploration vessels, Sarah explained patiently. We never claimed those represented our entire fleet. When your patrol ships scanned our system, they detected our civilian traffic. Our military assets remained discreet. The implications hit the council members like a physical blow. The humans had deliberately hidden their true strength during first contact. This deception will not be tolerated, Thys hissed. The council demands an immediate explanation. Oh, there's no deception, Sarah replied cheerfully. Just careful preparation. You see, humanity has been observing galactic civilization for quite some time. We've monitored your communications, studied your territorial expansion patterns, and learned about your methods of maintaining order. She paused, her expression growing serious. We know about the Altarians. We know about the Kelixi subjugation. We know about the 17 other species that chose extinction rather than slavery. Zektar felt a chill run down his spine. How long had the humans been watching them? Your point, human? He managed to ask. Our point is simple, Sarah responded. Humanity rejects your model of galactic civilization. We won't be your tributaries. We won't be your slaves. And we certainly won't allow you to continue genociding peaceful species. The chamber erupted in outraged voices, but Sarah continued speaking over the din. Consider this fair warning. Withdraw all council forces from Altarian space. Release all tributary species from their obligations. Dismantle your slave systems within 60 standard days. War Leader Brutok roared with fury. You dare make demands of this council. Your pathetic fleet will be scattered across the void. Will it? Sarah asked mildly. She turned to someone off-screen and said something inaudible. Moments later, new data began flowing across the Council's tactical displays. The energy signatures coming from the human fleet were unlike anything in their databases. The power readings suggested weapon systems that defied conventional understanding. What are we looking at? Thys whispered. The first lesson in why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars, Sarah explained. We are not peaceful because we are weak. We are peaceful because we understand exactly what we're capable of when that peace is broken. The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council in stunned silence. For the first time in centuries, they had encountered a species that not only refused to submit, but actively challenged their authority. And somehow, despite all their intelligence gathering and technological superiority, they had no idea what they were really dealing with. Admiral Jiang Wei stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the tactical displays update in real time. 63 days had passed since Ambassador Chen delivered humanity's ultimatum to the Galactic Council. The deadline had expired 3 days ago. "Status report," he requested calmly. "Long-range sensors confirm Council fleet movements throughout their territory," reported Commander Hassan from the sensor station. "Vorthon Empire forces are consolidating near the Kepler 442 system. Krillian hegemony battle groups are massing at the Altarian border. Total enemy force strength estimated at 8,000 vessels." Admiral Zhang nodded grimly. The Council's response was predictable but disappointing. Instead of considering humanity's demands, they had chosen overwhelming force. "Any word from the diplomatic channels?" "Ambassador Chen received a formal response an hour ago," Communications Officer Park announced. "The Council rejected all demands and declared humanity a hostile species. They're offering one final chance for unconditional surrender." "I see." Admiral Zhang turned to his executive officer. "Has there been any compliance with our ultimatum regarding tributary species?" Commander Rodriguez shook her head. "None, sir. In fact, intelligence reports suggest the Council has increased resource extraction from several tributary worlds. They appear to be stockpiling for extended conflict." The Admiral studied the star charts displayed around the bridge. Red icons marked Council fleet positions, while blue dots represented human forces. The numbers appeared overwhelmingly in the enemy's favor, just as they had always intended. "Sir," Commander Hassan called out, "we're receiving priority communications from multiple sources. The Nexari Collective, Thylorian Republic, and, interesting, 3 species I don't recognize. Put them through." The main screen divided into multiple sections, showing various alien faces. Admiral Zhang recognized the crystalline features of Nexari leadership and the feathered appearance of Thylorian representatives. "Human Admiral?" The Nexari spoke first, their translated voice carrying obvious fear. "Our collective wishes to clarify that we never supported the Council's aggressive policies. We were forced into membership through economic coercion." One of the unknown species, a being that appeared to be made of living metal, added, "The Ferox Coalition has monitored your dispute with the Galactic Council. We offer assistance against their oppression." Admiral Zhang studied each face carefully. "You wish to ally with humanity. We wish to be free of Council tyranny," the Thylorian representative clarified. "Your species appears to be the first with both the will and capability to challenge their dominance." "The Council has enslaved our worlds for 2 centuries, another unknown species reported. "They told us resistance was futile. You have proven otherwise." The Admiral considered their words. Intelligence had suggested that many Council members were actually conquered species forced into compliance. The humans had hoped their challenge might inspire rebellion, but this response exceeded expectations. "I appreciate your support," Admiral Zhang finally replied. "However, I must warn you that humanity fights this war alone. We ask nothing from you except that you protect your own people when the chaos begins." "You refuse our military aid?" the Nexari asked in confusion. "We don't need it," Admiral Zhang stated simply. "This is humanity's war to fight. Your freedom will be our gift to you." The alien representatives looked uncertain, but the Admiral had already made his decision. Humanity would not build their victory on the sacrifices of those they sought to liberate. After ending the communications, Admiral Zhang activated the fleet-wide command channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Zhang. Operation Thunderclap is now active. You know your targets and your missions. Remember that we fight not for conquest, but to ensure that no species will ever again face the choice between slavery and extinction." Throughout human space, the largest military operation in the species' history began to unfold. Ships that had remained hidden in asteroid fields, gas giant shadows, and deep space positions started moving toward their objectives. The first target was the Vorthan border fortress of Hegemonia Prime, a massive space station that served as the Council's primary military coordination center. Conventional wisdom suggested it would require a fleet of thousands to breach its defenses. Captain Sarah Kim, commanding the stealth destroyer UES Shadow Strike, disagreed with conventional wisdom. "Initiating quantum cloak," she announced to her bridge crew. "All stations report ready status." Her ship vanished from all known detection methods as it approached the fortress. The Shadow Strike represented one of humanity's greatest technological achievements, a vessel that could phase partially out of normal space-time, becoming effectively invisible and intangible. "Target acquired," Weapons Officer Torres reported. "Fortress shields are at full strength, defensive systems active." "Time to demonstrate why humans call themselves an apex predator species," Captain Kim replied. "Fire quantum torpedoes." The Shadow Strike's weapons materialized inside Hegemonia Prime's shield perimeter, bypassing all defensive systems. The quantum torpedoes detonated simultaneously throughout the station's critical systems. Within seconds, the fortress that had projected council power for 3 centuries was reduced to expanding debris. The 8,000 personnel aboard had no time to send distress signals or evacuate. Similar scenes played out across Council territory as human forces struck with precision and overwhelming technological superiority. The Krillian shipyards at Brutok's Den simply ceased to exist, deleted by weapons that converted matter directly into energy. Vorthan's supply depots vanished as human forces deployed dimensional weaponry that folded space-time around their targets. But the most shocking assault took place at the Council's capital world of Hegemon. Admiral Chen Li, Sarah's older brother, commanded the assault on the most heavily defended system in known space. Hegemon was protected by automated defense platforms, patrol fleets, and a barrier of artificial black holes that made approach theoretically impossible. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "enemy forces are moving to intercept. Count shows 400 vessels of various classifications." "Understood," Admiral Chen replied. "Deploy the Judgment Day Protocol." The single human ship approaching Hegemon began to change. Its hull flowed like liquid metal, expanding and reshaping itself. Within minutes, the vessel had transformed from a sleek cruiser into a massive geometric construct covered in weapon emplacements. "All systems nominal," his chief engineer reported. "Matter conversion reactors at full output. Temporal manipulation drive standing by." Admiral Chen studied the approaching enemy fleet. 400 ships against 1. The Council commanders probably thought they faced a madman or a fool. They were about to learn they faced neither. "Engage temporal acceleration," he ordered. Reality twisted around the human ship as it moved forward at subjective normal speed, while the universe outside slowed to a crawl. The enemy fleet hung motionless in space, their energy weapons frozen mid-discharge. The reconfigured human vessel moved through their formation like a shark among minnows, placing precise charges on each enemy ship. When the temporal field deactivated, 400 vessels exploded simultaneously. But Admiral Chen wasn't finished. He turned his ship toward Hegemon itself and activated humanity's most terrible weapon, the Planet Cracker Protocol. The device worked by destabilizing the quantum foam that held matter together at the subatomic level. It didn't destroy planets so much as convince them they had never existed in the first place. "Sir," his communications officer called out urgently, "we're receiving surrender requests from the planet's surface. Multiple species are begging for mercy." Admiral Chen hesitated. Intelligence indicated that Hegemon housed not just Council leadership, but millions of civilians from tributary species. "Tactical, give me precision targeting on Council government buildings only. Spare the civilian sectors." "Sir, the Planet Cracker can't be calibrated for selective targeting. It's all or nothing." Admiral Chen stared at the planet below, where desperate voices pleaded for their lives across every communication channel. This was the moment that would define humanity's character as much as their victory. "Stand down Planet Cracker Protocol," he ordered. "Deploy occupation forces instead. We're taking the planet intact." His bridge crew looked surprised, but immediately began implementing the new orders. Within hours, human troops were materializing directly inside Council government buildings, bypassing all security through matter transmission technology. The effect on Council leadership was immediate and absolute. War leader Brutok, found hiding in his personal bunker, simply collapsed when human soldiers appeared around him. Ambassador Zektar attempted to activate a dead man's switch that would have destroyed the Capitol building, only to discover that human technicians had already disabled all explosive systems. But it was the encounter with Council member Thess that proved most revealing about humanity's true nature. When human troops surrounded her emergency command center, she began executing civilian hostages, believing this would deter the humans from advancing. That was her mistake. Sergeant Martinez, leading the assault team, watched 3 innocent beings die before responding with humanity's true weapon, not their technology, but their fury. The Theta-class power armor enhanced his natural abilities beyond the physical limits of any known species. He moved through Theiss's guards like a force of nature, his weapons cutting through their battle armor as if it were paper. When he reached Thais herself, she was preparing to kill more hostages. "Stop," she hissed. "Come closer and they all die." Sergeant Martinez paused, his helmet sensors analyzing the situation. Then he spoke, and his voice carried the weight of humanity's accumulated rage at centuries of galactic injustice. "You misunderstand something fundamental about my species," he said quietly. "We don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't trade lives. We simply end threats." He moved faster than Thys could react, faster than her enhanced reflexes could process. Her weapon was torn from her grip and crushed before she could fire. Her own body was rendered immobile but unharmed. The humans wanted her alive to face justice. Throughout Council territory, similar scenes played out as human forces dismantled the infrastructure of oppression with surgical precision. Not a single civilian was harmed by direct human action, but every symbol of Council authority was systematically destroyed. The technological gap proved even wider than anyone had imagined. Council ships that required massive crews operated through advanced automation. Their most powerful weapons were mere curiosities compared to human capabilities. Their fastest vessels crawled through space while human ships manipulated space-time itself. But it was the psychological impact that truly broke Council resistance. For centuries, they had been the apex predators of galactic civilization. They had convinced themselves that strength came from the willingness to commit genocide, that power grew from the ability to inspire fear. They discovered too late that true apex predators don't need to inspire fear. They simply act. They don't threaten genocide. They possess the capability to unmake existence itself and choose mercy instead. Within 72 hours of the operation's start, organized Council resistance had effectively ended. Their fleets were scattered, their leadership captured or dead, their infrastructure dismantled. But humanity was just getting started. Admiral Zhang received reports from across the galaxy as tributary species declared independence and Council loyalists surrendered or fled. The political structure that had oppressed dozens of civilizations for centuries was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. "Sir," Commander Rodriguez reported, "we're receiving communications from the former Altarian colonies. The survivors want to know if the humans are their new masters." Admiral Zhang considered the question carefully. It was the most important decision humanity would make, not about warfare, but about what kind of galactic civilization they would help create. "Tell them," he said finally, "that humanity serves no masters and seeks no slaves. They are free to govern themselves as they see fit. And if they ask for our protection, tell them we'll consider it. But make it clear, any protection we provide comes without conditions or tribute. They owe us nothing." As reports continued flowing in, Admiral Zhang began to understand the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. They hadn't just won a war, they had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy. The question now was what they would do with that power, and whether any species would ever be foolish enough to challenge humanity again. 5 years had passed since the Galactic Council's defeat, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the newly constructed Interspecies Assembly, looking out at representatives from over 300 worlds. The contrast with the old council chambers could not have been more striking. Where the Galactic Council had built monuments to power and dominance, the Assembly Hall was designed for equality and cooperation. Every species sat at the same level, spoke with the same authority, and voted with equal weight, regardless of their military strength or territorial holdings. The floor recognizes Representative Thais of the reformed Serpentine Republics, Sarah announced. The former council member rose slowly, her movements still careful and deliberate. Prison had changed her, though whether for better or worse remained to be seen. Honored representatives, Thais began, her voice lacking its former arrogance. I wish to address the matter of the hegemon trials and their impact on galactic law. Sarah nodded. The trials of former council leadership had been a central issue for the new galactic government. Some species demanded execution, others preferred exile, and a few argued for rehabilitation programs. The Ferox Coalition maintains that justice has been served, the metallic beings announced through their representative. The guilty have been punished, the innocent freed, and the oppressed given voice. With respect, interjected the Thylorian delegate, justice requires more than punishment. It requires prevention. How do we ensure such tyranny never returns? Representative Thais raised a scaled hand. Perhaps that question is best answered by those who experienced humanity's justice firsthand. She activated a holographic display showing images from the trials. Former war leader Brutok sat in a simple chair, no longer the towering predator who had terrorized countless species. His tusks had been removed, not as punishment, but because he had repeatedly attempted to use them as weapons against his guards. The humans could have executed us all, Thais continued. Their technology certainly made such actions simple. Instead, they chose a more difficult path. The images shifted to show rehabilitation centers where former council leaders worked alongside their former victims. Brutok was teaching agricultural techniques to refugee communities, using his natural strength for construction rather than destruction. War leader Brutok now understands what it means to build rather than conquer, Thais explained. Ambassador Zektar spends his days transcribing testimonies from tribunal survivors, preserving their stories for future generations. I myself have been working with former tributary species to establish new trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Some would argue this constitutes insufficient punishment, the Nexari representative observed. Perhaps, Thais agreed, but it accomplishes something execution cannot. It forces us to confront the consequences of our actions every day. We cannot escape into martyrdom or claim victimhood. We must live with what we've done and work to repair the damage. Sarah watched the debate with satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of discourse the new galactic government was meant to foster, reasoned discussion among equals rather than edicts from the powerful. The floor now recognizes Admiral Zhang Wei of the Human Stellar Navy. Zhang stood from the human delegation section, his uniform simple and unadorned compared to the elaborate regalia favored by other species. Thank you, Ambassador Chen. I'm here to address concerns about human military capabilities and their impact on galactic stability. A ripple of tension moved through the chamber. This was the subject everyone thought about, but few dared raise directly. Several species have expressed anxiety about humanity's demonstrated technological superiority, Zhang continued. They worry about becoming the next targets of our weapons. I'm here to provide clarity on this matter." He gestured to his aide, who activated a massive holographic display showing the current disposition of human military forces. Currently, humanity maintains a total fleet of 47,000 vessels across all classifications. Our defensive installations protect 237 star systems. Our weapons technology remains several centuries ahead of any known galactic standard. The numbers drew gasps from many representatives. Most had suspected humanity's military was large, but the revealed scope was staggering. "However," Zhang continued, "I want to be absolutely clear about how these forces will be employed." The display changed to show patrol routes and defensive positions. 60% of our fleet is dedicated to anti-piracy operations and humanitarian assistance. 20% maintains the quarantine zones around former council strongholds, preventing unauthorized salvage operations that might spread dangerous technologies. 15% provides escort services for refugee transport and emergency relief operations. "What about the remaining 5%? Asked the representative from the Altarian survivors. Zhang's expression grew serious. "The remaining 5%, approximately 2,300 vessels, constitutes our rapid response force. These ships are designed for a single purpose: the immediate and absolute destruction of any entity that attempts to revive the old council's methods of governance." Silence filled the chamber. 2,300 ships dedicated solely to preventing future tyranny. "Let me be more specific," Zhang continued. "Humanity has identified certain behaviors as unacceptable in galactic civilization: species that enslave others, commit genocide, engage in forced tributary relationships, or attempt to establish dominance through terror will face immediate intervention." He gestured to another display showing various technological demonstrations. Ships disappearing from existence, planets being moved through space, stars being temporarily extinguished and reignited. We possess the capability to erase any threat to galactic freedom within hours of its emergence. We can move planets to safety, relocate entire star systems, or remove hostile forces from existence without affecting surrounding civilian populations. The implications were staggering. No species could hide from such capabilities. No force could resist them. "But most importantly," Zhang added, "we have demonstrated that we choose restraint over destruction whenever possible. The former council members who now live peacefully among us are proof of humanity's preferred methods." Representative Thiss nodded slowly. "The Admiral speaks truth. When humans captured me, I expected torture, execution, or enslavement. Instead, they offered education, redemption, and a chance to help heal the wounds I had helped create." "This raises an important question," the Ferox delegate interjected. "How do we know humanity won't eventually succumb to the same corruption that consumed the Galactic Council? Power has a tendency to corrupt even the most well-intentioned species." Zhang considered the question carefully. "That's a legitimate concern, and one humanity has taken seriously. We've implemented several safeguards." The display showed the structure of human government and military command. First, no single human has absolute authority over our military forces. Decision-making is distributed among multiple oversight bodies, each with the power to countermand the others. Second, our military doctrine requires unanimous consent from 3 separate human governments before deploying planet-killing weapons. This ensures that no emotional decision or temporary madness can lead to atrocity. Third, and most importantly, we've established the Observer Protocol. A new image appeared, a group of individuals from various species working alongside human military personnel. Representatives from 40 different species now serve as permanent observers within our military command structure. They have access to all operational data, participate in strategic planning, and possess the authority to formally object to any action they consider unjustified. The Nexari representative appeared stunned. You've given alien observers veto power over your military operations? We've given galactic civilization a voice in how our power is employed, Zhang corrected. Because ultimately our strength exists not to serve humanity's interests, but to protect the rights and freedoms of all sentient beings. And if these observers object to a human military action, then we don't take that action, Zhang replied simply. Better to err on the side of restraint than repeat the Council's mistakes. The chamber fell quiet as representatives absorbed this information. Humanity possessed overwhelming military power, but had voluntarily limited its use through unprecedented transparency and accountability. There's one more thing you need to understand, Zhang continued, his voice growing harder. Humanity's restraint should not be mistaken for weakness or indecision. The Observer Protocol exists to prevent unjustified aggression, not to paralyze our response to genuine threats. He activated a final display showing recent enforcement actions. When the Torvan Syndicate attempted to revive the slave trade 3 months ago, human forces intervened within 6 hours. When the Zorani Empire began annexing neutral worlds through military force, they found their fleets disabled and their leadership removed within 2 days. The images showed the aftermath of these interventions. In both cases, human forces had acted with surgical precision, removing the threatening leadership while leaving civilian populations unharmed. The galaxy now understands a simple truth, Zhang concluded. Aggressive expansion, forced subjugation, and crimes against sentient life will be met with immediate and overwhelming response. Not because humanity enjoys violence, but because we refuse to allow the strong to prey upon the weak. Ambassador Chen stood as Zhang returned to his seat. This brings us to today's primary agenda item, the formal establishment of the Galactic Freedom Charter. The holographic display showed a document that had been years in the making, crafted through input from hundreds of species and thousands of individuals. The Charter establishes fundamental rights that apply to all sentient beings regardless of species, origin, or technological level, Chen explained. It prohibits slavery, forced tribute, territorial expansion through conquest, and genocide in all its forms. More importantly, she continued, it establishes enforcement mechanisms. Any species can petition the Assembly for protection against aggression. Any individual can seek asylum from oppression. Any world can request humanitarian assistance. And humanity guarantees these rights? Asked the Thylorian representative. Humanity enforces these rights, Chen corrected. We are not the galaxy's rulers. We are its guardians. There is a crucial difference. She gestured toward the voting mechanisms built into each representative station. The Charter has been under discussion for 18 months. All concerns have been addressed, all modifications incorporated. Today, we vote on whether to formally adopt it as galactic law. The voting began immediately. Species after species registered their approval. Some enthusiastically, others reluctantly, but the pattern was clear. Within an hour, the Charter had been approved by an overwhelming majority. The motion carries, Chen announced. The Galactic Freedom Charter is now the supreme law of civilized space. Celebrations broke out throughout the chamber, but Chen raised her hand for attention. Before we conclude today's session, Admiral Zhang has one final announcement. Zhang stood again, his expression grave. With the Charter now in effect, I'm authorized to share intelligence about activities beyond our current borders. The display shifted to show previously unknown regions of space, areas that had remained unexplored by Council forces. Our long-range scouts have detected 14 different civilizations in neighboring galactic sectors. 3 of them appear to be expanding aggressively toward our territory. Tension filled the chamber. New threats meant new decisions about how to respond. The Helios Dominion controls over 200 star systems through military conquest. They practice systematic genocide against species they consider inferior. Images showed devastated worlds and refugee ships fleeing Helios forces. The Void Syndicate operates a galactic slave trade spanning 50 systems. They capture sentient beings for sale to species that value forced labor. More horrifying images filled the display. Beings in chains, children separated from families, entire populations being processed like commodities. The Machine Collective has been converting organic life into cybernetic components across 30 systems. They view biological intelligence as raw material for technological enhancement. The final images showed worlds stripped of all organic life, their populations transformed into components for vast mechanical entities. Each of these civilizations possesses technology roughly equivalent to the former Galactic Council. Each has expressed hostile intentions toward our sector. Each represents an existential threat to every species in this chamber. Zhang paused, letting the implications sink in. Humanity requests authorization to extend charter protections to threatened populations beyond our current borders. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species argued for immediate intervention, others counseled caution, and a few suggested diplomatic contact before military action. Representative Theiss stood slowly. The floor recognizes that this is the moment that defines us. Do we extend protection only to those already within our borders, or do we defend the innocent regardless of their location? The Charter establishes universal rights, the Altarian survivor noted. Universal means all sentient beings, not just those fortunate enough to live within our territory. But extending our protection zone means potential conflict with species we've never encountered, the Nexari representative warned. Are we prepared for wars against unknown enemies? Admiral Zhang addressed this concern directly. Our analysis suggests that these aggressive civilizations will eventually reach our borders regardless of our actions. The choice is not whether to fight them, but whether to fight them here after they've enslaved or destroyed dozens of innocent species, or fight them now when we can still save their victims. How confident is humanity in its ability to defeat these new threats? Asked the Ferox delegate. Completely, Zhang replied without hesitation. Our technological advantages over the former council apply equally to these civilizations. The real question is whether we can save the innocent populations before they're completely destroyed. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The same moral principles that had driven the formation of the new galactic government demanded action to protect those beyond its borders. When the vote was called, the result was unanimous. Every species in the Assembly authorized humanity to extend charter protections to threatened populations throughout the local galactic cluster. So be it, Zhang announced. Operation Lighthouse begins immediately. We go not as conquerors but as liberators. We seek not territory, but the freedom of all sentient beings to choose their own destiny. As the Assembly session ended and representatives dispersed to their ships, Ambassador Chen remained behind with Admiral Zhang. Do you think they understand what they've just authorized? She asked. Zhang studied the star charts showing their expanded area of responsibility. They've authorized humanity to become the galaxy's permanent guardians, to ensure that no species will ever again face the choice between slavery and extinction. And if other aggressive civilizations emerge beyond these three, then we'll stop them too, Zhang replied simply. However many there are, wherever they arise, for as long as necessary. Chen nodded, understanding the full scope of the commitment they had just made. Humanity would spend the next several centuries, perhaps millennia, establishing a zone of protection around every world that chose freedom over oppression. The universe is larger than we initially imagined, Zhang continued. Our preliminary surveys suggest hundreds of thousands of inhabited systems within our galactic cluster alone, some peaceful, some aggressive, most somewhere in between. How many will we need to fight? As many as necessary, Zhang repeated. Because that's the promise we made when we first encountered the Galactic Council's crimes. Never again would the strong prey upon the weak without consequence. They stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the magnitude of humanity's self-appointed mission. Do you ever wonder if we're making the right choice? Chen asked. Zhang considered the question seriously. I wonder if we're making the only choice consistent with human nature. We cannot stand by and watch innocents suffer when we have the power to help them. Even if it means eternal warfare? Especially if it means eternal warfare, Zhang replied, because the alternative is eternal oppression. As they left the assembly hall, reports were already coming in from the Lighthouse Fleet's advanced scouts. Initial contact with Helios Dominion forces had resulted in the immediate surrender of 3 battle groups and the liberation of 4 slave worlds. The Void Syndicate had attempted to resist, only to discover that their most powerful weapons could barely register on human sensor arrays. The Machine Collective had tried to assimilate a human ship, only to find that their cybernetic viruses were incompatible with quantum-based human technology. Within weeks, all 3 aggressive civilizations had either surrendered unconditionally or been completely destroyed by their own refusal to accept defeat. But the victory had revealed something even more significant. These civilizations had been expanding toward human space, specifically because they had detected signs of a powerful technological society. Other aggressive species throughout the galaxy were likely doing the same. Humanity's demonstration of power had not deterred future challenges, it had attracted them. The galaxy was full of species that viewed themselves as apex predators, convinced that strength gave them the right to dominate others. Each defeat of such a species only drew the attention of more distant threats. Admiral Zhang realized that humanity had embarked on an endless mission. They would spend the rest of their existence as a species fighting to protect the innocent from those who would exploit them. But rather than discouraging him, this understanding filled him with quiet satisfaction, because it meant that never again would any species face the choice between freedom and destruction. Never again would the strong prey upon the weak without consequence. Never again would peaceful civilizations need to fear aggressive neighbors. Humanity had taken responsibility for ensuring that the galaxy's future would be built on cooperation rather than conquest, on mutual respect rather than forced submission. And if that meant fighting forever against those who chose tyranny over freedom, then humanity would fight forever. Because that's what apex predators do. They protect their territory and everything in it. And now, humanity's territory was the entire galaxy. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of galactic protection had begun. And no species would ever challenge that reality, because they had finally learned what humanity had always known. True strength is not the ability to destroy, but the will to protect. Forever.